In this video, I chat to Wez Saunders from Defected. I'm very excited. I've waited for this interview for a long time. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. We tried to do this a few times, eh?
I know, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
No problem.
Today we're going to chat about you and Defected and running record labels and releasing records and building artists and all that lovely stuff. So let's dive into it. Hey, Wez. I just want to start very briefly at the start. Let's just start about your origin story. I know from the fact that you started not in music and you got to music a long way, and I'd really just like to chat about it because I know people on our channel probably haven't seen it. I know you put it out loads on Facebook, but
yeah. So my well, firstly, as I said, my name's Wez Saunders, managing director of Defected Records now, but didn't always start out that way. My origins into dance music started a long time ago, actually. My first introduction, weirdly, into house music was a long time ago. My dad introduced me to Mars, Pump Up the Volume, and sort of sat me down as a kid saying, this is Eric B. and Rakim, this is James Brown, these are the samples in the record, and it really kind of changed my mind at that point to go from somebody that was into man and his guitar or man and his band or new romantics, as it was at the time, into actually there's electronic music and kind of understanding that. So from that point I kind of evolved into being into like cold cut bits and pieces and started to get an idea. And my mates were all listening to Michael Jackson and Madonna, and I was listening to dance music. And my parents had bought me like a Sony Walkman for Christmas, which had a radio player and a tape deck on it. And
I used to have one of those.
I'd actually dropped the tape deck down the stairs, like literally within 5 minutes of opening it. And the tape deck busted, but all I could tune into was the radio and was Kiss FM while it was still illegal. So I was listening to like Colin Down, Colin Favor and Trevor Nelson and Mad Hatter Nelson at the time, and these DJs, Roger Sanchez guest mixes and things like that, and I didn't know what it was, didn't have a clue about the music. So that was like the real origins. This is back in the late 80s.
Wow, okay.
So I had this early introduction to dance music, didn't really know what it was, but loved it. And then as I was growing up, I was never really into pop music, so I was into from what was essentially like disco, soul, house, acid house kind of music on being played by some of those DJs, and then it evolved into what ultimately became the rave scene, and then it was we followed the jungle path rather than the hardcore path, and so my roots were always dance music. And then naturally at that stage you want to be a DJ, so you know my parents bought me decks in 1994, and me and my brother, I couldn't mix for shit, and I couldn't beat match jungle or cut or anything. I couldn't do any of the things that you needed to do to mix jungle, which was what my mates were into. So I kind of went back into house music. So my cousins were DJs, and they would give me all the records that they thought were too cheesy for their sets, so they would give me things like, you know, Marshall Jefferson or Promised Land or Nightcrawlers and all these records that for them were just like, they moved on from them. But as a kid, I'm like, this is gold. Champion records and just all sorts of tracks, and it's just like all these sorts of records that I had the luxury of being given. Finally taught myself how to mix, and then naturally you kind of start to DJ, and I was blagging it, mate. I gotta be honest with you. I was in clubs telling promoters I'd played at gigs I'd never played at, and just to get another gig, and it worked. And then I ended up playing. I played at Lazy Dog, and I played at a few places where I just ended up kind of blagging my way into, and then from that point, crossed paths with a lot of people, you know, entered competitions and sort of thing, and was like doing quite well. And then my wife fell pregnant when we were 18. So I focused on a career in investment banking because obviously it's considered a real job, or was considered a real job. And I spent 12 years working for Deutsche Bank. And I gave up music entirely. I sold off my record collection. I'd ripped all my vinyl to MP3s, and I'd burnt all my CDs, and I sold practically all but about 500 records. And I was promoted every 2 years from when I started, travelled the world with the bank, was vice president on the way to director, and my brother died of leukemia. He was diagnosed and died in 23 days, and he was 24 years old. And
how old were you then at the time?
I was nearly 28.
Right.
So basically, it was like he died 20 days before my 28th birthday.
Wow.
And I just was like, you know what, life's too short. And I went into I spoke to Paula, as you know, my wife, and sort of explained to her that I didn't really want to do, life was too short, I didn't really want to do this anymore. And I went, spoke to my manager in the bank and said, look, I've worked here for 10 years at the time, and I want to go and do something new. You only live once. And he said to me, if you see out everything, I'll make you redundant. So I had the luxury again of being able to be in a position where that happened to give me the opportunity to come back into music, which was my love as I was growing up.
Yeah, of course.
And then I literally started from the very bottom. So the day before my 29th birthday, the day before my 30th birthday, still 29, made redundant from the bank. Day after, I set up my own label family.
Yep.
And I, 3 months later, I got my first paycheck through. I'd been working 24/7 for 3 months, 265 quid. And I thought, if I'm going to make something of this, I'm going to have to pull my finger out my arse.
Yeah.
And so I went from having one label into actually ended up 5 over the space of about 18 months or so. There was 4 labels that had different identity, and then there was one development area which we had teaching young people how to produce music, and then I ended up managing artists as well.
Amazing, okay.
And then that program went on to set up a community development centre, which became a charity organisation in Stratford, which still exists today.
Amazing.
And teaches approximately 180 kids a year, or young people a year, I believe, still around that number. And then I was still producing and DJing at this time, because obviously, you have to do a little bit of everything to kind of make ends meet. And I'd remixed one of the 20th anniversary remixes of Inner City Good Life, and one of the first people that I dealt with on the course, the teaching young people, was Damari and Dancy Saunderson, Kevin Saunderson's children. And through Kevin, I had been introduced to Simon Dunmore, and I had a demo that I'd written with Sherry Vendio. We had a record that done really well with Grant Nelson earlier in the year, and I'd sent to Simon for consideration for Soul Heaven. So that was our kind of open dialogue. And then I was sitting at home one night, 3 in the morning, been working my nuts off. It was like 24/7 at that stage, and I just couldn't break through any further than I was. I felt like I was hitting a glass ceiling constantly, and I was getting a little bit frustrated with myself, because I've always been like wanting to be better than the person I was yesterday, and I couldn't push on anymore. And I sent Simon an email saying, look, this is who I am, this is what I've done, I'd love a mentor, would you mind meeting me for a chat? And he said sure, and Simon's time's really precious. And I went in and I met him. I was in there for like, it gets longer every time I tell this story, but I'm sure it was about 3 hours. It was just after Wolf of Wall Street came out, and I remember him saying to me, you seen Wolf of Wall Street? I said, yeah, and he said, I believe you could sell me this pen.
That's the attitude. You can sell anything. Sell me this fucking pen right here. You can sell anything, sell that.
Go ahead.
Sell me that pen.
Can I finish eating first? I'm eating today.
Brad, show him how it's done. Boom. Sell me that pen. Watch. Go on.
Let me sell this fucking pen.
That's my boy right there.
This pen.
Fucking sell anything.
Why don't you do me a favor? Why'd you name down that napkin for me?
I don't have a pen.
Exactly. Supply and demand, my friend.
You know what I'm saying? He's creating urgency.
And I left. I was like, it was good meeting, and I went home, and that was that. I didn't think anything more of it. Took some really interesting points from Simon, and the way that he kind of progressed in his career, and some lots of food for thought. 2 days later, I was sick, and I don't usually have my phone on if I'm sick, and I certainly don't answer calls from numbers I don't know. And I was just laying in bed with what I thought was a chest infection. Phone call, rang, answered it. It's like, hi, Wez, Simon Dunmore. I'd like to offer you a job. So Simon offered me a position to do club promotions, and at the time my initial thought was, what is club promotions? I thought he meant like go to clubs and promote stuff, and he's like, no, I want you to promote our records to DJs. as in getting them played in clubs. And I literally thought to myself, he's going to pay me for that. You know? I was like, because bearing in mind I run my own small label, and I was getting records played by Annie Mac and Pete Tong, and Simon Dunmore of Defected Records wants to pay me to get Defected Records played by club DJs. I'm like, what?
That's easy.
So anyway, obviously I took the opportunity and very quickly reshaped the way that we serviced records at Defected. For a long time, Croatia Records had gone on to be passed on to promotions companies, and I essentially brought most of that, almost all of it, in-house. I went from being club promotions to executive producer of the radio show and in-house plugger alongside the radio thing, and from there I went on to being head of label, and then head of marketing for recordings, then head of marketing for the business, all of which I retained all of my responsibilities.
Nice.
So I was still producing the radio show, still servicing records, still plugging records. And then when the guy who was managing director at the time left, or was leaving, Simon called me to the side and asked me if I wanted to take the job as managing director, which of course I grabbed with both hands. And I felt like my entire life had led me to a point of, you know, there were certain kind of difficulties and challenges that I'd experienced with my brother dying, and some of the issues that we challenged in the industry with the banking world. I was promoted every 2 years in investment banking, vice president on the way to director, so I had the ability to manage people and understand the business and strategy, etc., etc. And obviously I've been a music fan since I was, you know, forever, and a house music fan for nearly 30 years. And it all led me to the point, and because of all of those experiences, I feel like, you know, I really feel at home doing what I'm doing, and it is a way of life, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so what is it like? I guess the next thing is, what's a day to day look like for you now as your managing director? What do you do each day when you're going to work?
Well, I've got to say, actually, one of the, I'll talk about challenge actually first, because not many people do that. But I've been managing director now since nearly two years. So I'll be entering my third Ibiza season as managing director. That's the way I'm looking at it. Because the previous managing director left just on the cusp of the season starting. So I've seen through two seasons.
And that was the first season you came back after having a break, wasn't it, as well?
No, we took a break in 2016, so 17, 18... Oh, yeah, you're right, yeah. You know more than I do. Yes is the answer. So, yeah, it was our first season at Eden, yeah. So, that was an interesting summer, because that was the first time we'd ever done Defected and Glitterbox on the island at the same time as our Croatia festival. And also, it was the same time as Cola was happening, and there was a business restructure, and I was given the opportunity to make some sort of changes to the structure, and Simon and I worked really well together. He was a club promotions person to start with. So challenges. So actually, going through, bear in mind, I may as well have stuck a broom up my ass and swept the floor when I started, because I was almost at the bottom of the ladder, right? And then subsequently, as a result of doing that, and as club promotion manager and climbing the ladder to managing director, I know how to do most of the people's jobs. So the natural instinct for anybody in that capacity is to, if there's a problem, to kind of take control of the situation. So the delegation and the working towards allowing somebody else to do it and fix their problems probably still is the thing that I struggle with most. But I trust the team, like, unconditionally, and having a real team that we do trust, like, in that manner, has enabled us, not just, you know, personally, but Defected as an entire business, as an entity, Glitterbox as a brand, to really continue to grow. And without the people and the staff that we have, I
definitely have the same problem with that. I literally, because I obviously do everything. When I have had people that come and help me, I definitely have had problems with delegating. How did you find something that's inside you, or do you have to have a word with yourself quietly and go, you need to let that go, you should let that go? Or
both, actually, both. I mean, my to-do lists are ridiculous, like, as in detailed. I lay there at night, sometimes in bed, I must drive my wife mental, where I'll lay there and I'll be thinking about stuff and I'll just be making notes on my phone.
Yeah.
And my notes page next morning could be like 2 pages long, where I just stuff this in my mind. And then now what I started to do over sort of a 6 to 9 month period was to actually go look at every single one and go, who is going to do this?
Right.
You're not going to do this. Who is going to do it?
Right.
And I would just literally look at it and be like, right, that person will be able to do this. And then I would collate them together, and I'd have a little sort of section of notes for that person. I'd just sit down with them and say, right, I need you to do this, and this is why. And we'd go through everything, and we'd talk about it together. And they'd push back on it, and they'd say, no, like, I don't think it should be done like that, or don't think we should do that, whatever. And we'd be open, and we'd get to a point where there was an agreement, and I would leave them to it. And I felt the trust and confidence in their delivery and them in my direction. And there's a few young members of staff. Defected is a young team in the main. And most of the people in around the senior management team and the senior leadership team have been promoted from within and given opportunity, including myself.
Yeah.
So because of that, it's a real good. I hate to continue to use the term family vibe on it, but there's real togetherness. There's a real.
You always
family
get that when we're with you and you're the team. You get that from your team.
Somebody came over to us on Friday with the opening party at Eden and said to one of our guys, "Who are you guys? You're like a big family." And actually said that to him, and we just laughed. It's just
That's cool.
So,
that is nice, man.
Yeah.
So so you've changed things as responsibility. That's amazing, man. You've had that power to kind of shape Simon's, what he's built, and now you're getting your own vision, I guess, in there as well.
Well, I would say we're on the same page. Actually,
Nice.
I wouldn't say that it's. I mean, that's why it's worked, in my opinion. Is not I haven't gone and changed anything. I've just enabled Simon to be creative whilst I've been organised, essentially.
Right,
and
amazing.
together we, manage the team and the business. And whilst he doesn't have to worry about the finer detail at this moment in time, I do. And whilst he has an incredible creative ear and eye, I don't necessarily. So, certainly not to Simon's
It's a nice
level.
marriage.
So it works, yin and yang, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Obviously on this channel we talk about giving tips to DJs and tips to helping labels grow and DJs grow. So I want just trying to pull some corkers out of your brain.
Well, I guess there's 3 strings here. There's DJs, there's producers, and there's labels. So let's talk about producers first, because I think we'll go producer, DJs, labels, and then you'll see. I think they'll kind of connect, come back around. So, from a producer point of view, you and I have had this conversation before. That when someone sends me a demo, the thing that actually kind of not irritates me, but I feel like people need to just realise what they're doing is you send a demo. And immediately afterwards, if you get rejected, you'll send another one.
Yeah.
And for me, I've explained this before. If you're going to send me a demo, I expect it to be the best record that you have.
Yeah.
So if you're going to send me a second demo 90 seconds later, I already, before I listen to it, don't think it's going to be as good as the first one that you sent me that I've said no to.
Yeah.
Now, I will listen and I'll always give constructive feedback, but I think patience is really key when you're becoming a new producer, and a strategy. It's like I talk about being better than the person you was yesterday. That's my own ethos in everything.
I'm the same as
you
well.
can't do any better than you did yesterday. Don't compete with anybody else. So as a young producer, have an idea. I'm going to release a record. Your first record, I saw your post the other day. Your first record is going to be shit. First DJ set is going to be shit. Your first social media post is going to be shit. It's okay.
Yeah.
Just better it next time.
My
And
first video
continue
was shit.
to better it every time. And if you do that and you have an understanding and you go, right, you know what, the first label I want to release on is X, the next one is Y, the next one is Z. You make sure that you understand what your demographics are. Don't be releasing music because you want for your peers. Make music for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you like it and will play it, then there's your starting point.
Yeah.
And don't try to make a record because you want Jamie Jones to play it or Sam Divine to play it. Make a record because you're feeling it and you would play it and be proud of it yourself. once you get to that sort of situation and you kind of can help push on, then you just need to kind of try to continuously manage that as a cycle. There's so many DJ producers that make a banging record that's amazing because they've spent all that time making a record for themselves that they love, and then they take on a career and they're no longer able to make records to the standard of that very first record or the record that broke them through. And there's a combination of reasons, one being the relentless touring schedule, because that's how they get paid. But I do think that some lose a little bit of focus on why they're doing what they do. And it's really important.
Also, maybe they didn't have enough records ready when they released the banger to have backup records in the box for the next releases.
Yeah, and that's why I said about strategy. If you've kind of, I always sort of, when I was managing Darren Emerson, my advice to him was to have a number of records ready to go. And Darren sometimes would have like 3 or 4 records released to go at one time, and then whilst those records were being worked and in motion, he'd be working on the next ones. And it's like, I would recommend that that's a process to anybody. You know, as most people know, like Low Stepper is a dear friend of mine, and it's the same feedback that I'd give him. It's the same feedback that we give our artists. I mean, even Ferric Dawn right now, with the In My Arms version, which is the top line version of In Arms, has come with You're the One. He's remixing a Melbourne Moore track, and he's got other records already in the pipeline. The Jack Black project we release sometimes, and we've already signed a number of other records. I can't say exactly how many, but
that's
several.
Well done. Well done, that's great.
And it's but you get the point. It's about having that strategy and understanding. So then from the producer element, what will happen is the chances are that you're DJing or want to be DJing, because most people are DJ producers now. There's very, very few that are either a DJ or a producer. Sam Divine is only still growing as a producer. She has, you know, she's only been making records for a couple of years and DJing for a long time. Jess Bay's on our agency. She hasn't made a single record. Loeco, who we're investing in right now, who played at Defected opening party last week, playing for us again this week. She hasn't made a record yet. So
that's interesting.
There are DJs, good quality DJs, that can get opportunities, and I would honestly, it is a little bit more luck than judgment. Sam Divine came to, when she lived in Ibiza and she was working as a PR, she went to every single Defected party for an entire season, maybe even 2, before she was kind of seen as a DJ. And then once somebody had seen her DJing and realised she's actually a very good DJ, in fact she's an excellent DJ, sorry Sam, she's an excellent DJ, she was given opportunity. Jess Bays, similarly, we said, you know, her connection with Sam has helped to open the door for Jess, but we've seen Jess playing and realised how good a DJ she is. She's also an excellent DJ. And Loeca, I'm not entirely sure how our guys saw Loeca. She was playing at an event that one of the guys were at, and then she's a resident at Ocean Beach, she's playing at Mambo, etc. And it's just by being there and seeing these people. It's not always easy for everybody, but at the end of the day, these people never went out to position themselves in a lane that would be noticed by Defected. They just kept doing what they love. And that's my advice is, you know, if you can get yourself DJ gigs or a residency to do the same thing, just keep plugging away at what you're doing, because if you are good enough, I believe that you will get what you deserve.
I agree.
And then the other factor, of course, is social media, and I think that a lot of people mistake the why you're doing what you're doing across social media. A lot of people doing it and creating, you know, humorous viral content because they're looking to clock up numbers, but actually if you focus on a fan base, a real solid fan base, whether that's 5 people or 500 or 500,000, they will help you to start to grow as an artist. So again, consistency and being who you are and doing it for the right reasons and portraying that across social media, it is really challenging. You have to be present everywhere.
There's a report that you only need 1,000 true fans to be happy, and actual fans. If 1,000 true fans give you £100 a year, then you're in a nice place, you know. And rewarding those, literally rewarding that audience and being present with just that audience and knowing every person that's in your audience is much more value than 100,000 fans where you're getting 2 comments.
Yeah, I truly believe that, because you know there are some DJs that are building or have built a career because of their social media presence.
Yeah.
There are some that, you know, DJ producers that have made amazing records.
Yeah.
There are some that are amazing DJs, and there are some that can do it all. Don't worry about that and them and what they're doing. Just make sure that if you know what and why you're doing what you do, then you will gain fans who like the things that you're doing, and just focus on them.
Yeah.
Don't focus on DJs in the industry. Don't make a record going, I want to sign this to Defected. Make a record for you.
Yeah. Maybe.
And then give your fans more of what they want.
Yeah.
Don't run away from it. Yeah? Because how many times does that happen?
Yeah.
Oh look, I've had a #1 record in the UK. I'm going to completely change direction and never play this record that you all come to see me for. Yeah? So it's important to give your fans what they want. And again, what you know, as I say, things we go over and over and over, but it's really important to kind of focus on that. And then with the labels, I always say to people, if you've got a strategy for your release schedule and you're DJing and you've got a career, or you're slowly building a career, the next step is to identify record labels that are going to do something for you.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean to say that you have to be paid tens of thousands of pounds to sign records or DJ at their events or whatever it may be that your initial feeling is. It's about what are they offering. Are they offering me a promotion outlet for my music? Are they getting my music into the right hands of the right DJs? Are they going to help me get the right press coverage? Am I going to get gigs off the back of it? Am I going to get streaming numbers? It doesn't have to be all of these things.
Yeah.
It just has to be something, one or even half of one of those things at the stage of your career. So if you're making your first record, I would say the most important thing is to release with a label that has a real good PR and promotion strategy.
Right.
Because the most important thing is to get your music out there and heard and profiled.
Yeah.
I
guess that's going to be from like doing a bit of research, see where if that label's putting out links to places online that they're getting coverage on, really digging into that label, I guess.
And which labels are shouting about their artists? I mean, you with your projects at the moment, you're doing a really good job at shouting about people that are up and coming. They've got Jesus Pablo, Paul Morgan, who he's running a number of labels, Something Different Music Group. I see him shouting about artists that I've never heard of, and it gets my attention.
Yeah,
and then I'm looking at that, going, who are these guys? What are they doing? I mean, even to be fair, there are other promotions, like events companies and promotions out there that I see DJs playing for, and I'm interested to know what's going on. I'm looking at these things because I don't know, and
I always look at the room threes. I always look through the room threes and then go through their SoundClouds and see what they're actually doing, what those DJs are doing.
Yeah.
And see which ones I like.
Yeah, and it only takes, like I was saying about Loeka and Jess or Sam Divine, it only takes somebody in a position like me or Simon Dunmore or one of our guys to see someone they're interested in and come back and say, this person is interested, for the rest of us to want to know what this person is doing.
Yeah.
And development thing's very, very important to me. We're setting up the community development stuff and working with some young people.
I never needed that. It's mad.
Yeah, the guys, the project and the tutors and the people involved in that project have worked with Jay Huss with Notes.
Wow.
It's been it was a real viable exercise actually, and something that I'm very pleased to have been part of.
Amazing.
Yeah.
While we're on labels, let's talk about promoting records, because I know from a label point of view, how long should you be working a record? And then I'd like to talk about some records that you've kind of promoted.
Okay. How long should you be promoting a record? I don't think there's an answer to that. I think that you just have to make sure that when you sign a record and you're investing in a record, it's not to fill a gap in your release schedule.
Yeah.
It's not just to throw it out there and leave it. You have to. I mean, actually, the previous managing director once said to me, "If you see a spark, throw petrol on it," and that was what he's. If you think about it like that, if you see a record and you understand, okay, I'm going to try to get this played by Annie Mac or Pete Tong or Danny Howard or Kiss FM or Eats Everything or Luke Solomon or Simon Dunmore or Marco Carola, whatever your target is, if you can help that, whether you're as an artist or as a label, what are you going to do next? Are you going to take that and you're going to create an asset that you can use to re-promote it? Are you going to use that to push it to other DJs? Are you going to use that to try to push on to get more coverage, chartings, press? Is your agenda to be music heard in clubs or on radio or streaming? Understand. Excuse me. Sorry. If you understand what you're trying to achieve with the record and ultimately the artist, then your promo plan can be a long time. We worked, and Cola's not a good example because it was an exception, but we worked Cola for about 2 years.
Yeah, so for those viewers that don't know, you signed Cola?
So
let's talk about Cola.
Yeah, so Dave Whelan and I had been in contact previously when he was DJing on Capital in Liverpool, or Juice, and we'd set up a record label called DFX, which the idea behind DFX was similar lane to what Zuli was, a bit more commercial, sort of vocal dance music. It was at the time that streaming was just growing. The idea behind DFX was to be able to have ultimately commercially exploitable records in the streaming world.
Right.
Something that we hadn't necessarily done at that stage. Even though Defected is synonymous with a number of seminal house music anthems, they weren't ever signed to be hits. They were signed to be club records that became crossover records.
Right.
At DFX, even though we weren't looking to sign records that were hits, we were looking for records that were directly commercially exploitable to some degree in the streaming world.
Yeah.
Streamable. So I reached out to a few artists, CamelPhat being one of them, and said, look, have you got any records? And Dave sent me a record called Monsters, which we didn't sign. Andy, Daniel and Adrian and myself listened to it and we liked it, but it wasn't quite right.
I premiered that record.
You did, yeah?
Later on down the line.
And good record, but it wasn't for what we were looking for.
Yeah.
And then he sent me Cola, and the email title said Cola Solomon support, and I didn't listen to it for about 2.5 weeks. And I was sat at home on a Sunday and I thought, I need to go through the demos, and I tried to listen to it. The link was dead. I sent Dave a message, said, Dave, can you re-upload it? He said yes, sent it to me, and I listened to it, and I was like, this is actually more for Defected. So I sent it to Andy Daniel. Andy Daniel does what Andy Daniel does best, and A&R'd the record slightly, not massively, but he put his own sort of little tweaks in here and there and came up with the records. We decided to release it on Defected, and on June the 23rd that year it was scheduled. What happened was I'd given folders to our to our DJs that were playing in Eden. So I'd given folders to MK, Sonny Federa, Sam Devine, Danny Howard, Amin Edge and Dance, and a couple of others. And I put Cola in this folder. And we got here for the opening party, and I heard Cola everywhere. Like, I heard it at Mambo, I heard it in Eden, I started hearing it people, these DJs playing it at their events. And then so I started hearing everybody playing the record, and Danny Howard played it on Radio 1. And this was before it was supposed to be, because the way that the business strategy had changed was that it had to be available at streaming services at the same time as radio. And got an incredible reaction, and then MK played it at our opening party, and between the video of MK playing it and Danny playing it on Radio 1 on the same weekend, I was getting hit up left, right and centre for this record, so we started to realise there was a bit of momentum about it. So I started seeding the record a little bit more, because I was still working the records at that time. The guys were playing it all the time, and their profile was raising because of hanging out with Charlie, being number one for so long. And the record just started to take a bit of a life of its own. And now, 200 million streams later, 2 million record sales, certified in God knows how many countries. I mean, I literally lost track, platinum in the UK. Yeah, it's undoubtedly I would say one of the proudest moments of my entire career.
I bet.
And I'm just really honoured to be part of it. And you know, listen, the guys, Dave and Mike, you know, I have all the time in the world for those guys. They deserve every level of success that they've achieved. They've worked very, very hard under various aliases, and they've done an incredible job at sticking in their lane and doing what they do for themselves. And I take my hat off to those guys, because you know, people do say well done to us, but let's be honest with you, those guys in Elderbrook, they made the magic happen, and without them being in the studio together, then there would be no Cola. And just very grateful that they had the trust in us to work it, and we had the opportunity to do so. Yeah,
amazing. I think finally, I guess I just wanted to ask, I guess if DJs want to send you records, what's the process, and how do they go about doing it?
Well, I think that when DJs firstly, make sure that the record is tagged properly.
Yeah.
My advice to people, and this is not like company line, this is my advice, would be artist name, track name, mix type, and I would actually put your email address on the track.
Wow, okay.
Because I actually receive a lot of demos that are not marked up like that, and it's just a name. Yeah. And I'll listen to it and I'll be like, oh, that's quite good. And then I'm trying to find who sent it to me. I'm searching the name and everything. It's like, tag the record properly.
Because I bet I'm pretty time precious, so you must be really time precious. So putting that in there actually gives you more opportunity.
Yeah. Secondly, I would say make it streamable and downloadable. I'm quite happy to receive Dropbox links myself. SoundCloud works amazingly well. Yeah. And because you can play them without downloading them, and then if I listen to it and go, oh, this is actually quite good, then I'll download it. Although my job isn't actively A&Ring, the A&R team will take these records, they will download them in the main, they will take them into a session where we listen to all of the records that have been sort of shortlisted for consideration, and they'll do a session where the place, it doesn't really matter which of the A&R guys it's sent to, Simon Dunmore, Andy Daniel, Luke Solomon, Ollie Welsh, Melvo Baptiste, Adrian Bookbinder, myself, although I'm not in those meetings anymore, even Jeremy Newell for the Fourth Floor. That's 8 of us that are contactable to hear and listen to music. We do have a demos@defected.com email address. I know many people don't think that we listen to those, but we do. And we just can't get back to everybody, you know?
Yeah,
it's like, we do try.
Yeah, of course.
But I would say, honestly, I would say 85% of what gets sent there gets listened to.
Nice, that's really cool. That's a good percentage, right?
Yeah.
They've got a chance. They have a good, just make sure it's quality.
And Ollie Welsh is listening to, like he's started as a A&R junior, working with Simon and Andy Daniel in particular. And Ollie's listening to, being a filter. So
that's cool.
If you send Ollie cakes or whatever he's into, then maybe, maybe he'll listen to your record sooner. No, but Ollie is listening to everything. So we're conscious of that. We understand that there's a need, but we don't just sign. It's always about the music.
Yeah.
Always about the music. And you don't need to send 2-page explanations about the record.
Nice hello.
If you know what we do and you're familiar with the sound of the labels, and that you can send an email that says, oh yeah, I got this record that I feel is in a similar vein to Ferric Dawn or Cola or whatever other record it is, you got more. I think there's more of a chance of us checking those records than if you write a 2-page story as to why you've created this record. Now, appreciate why those people do that, and sympathise with those that take the time to do that don't get a response, because actually that's quite hard when you poured your heart in your sleeve.
Yeah.
But as I tell everyone, every no is closer to a yes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we've talked about records, we've talked about DJs, we've talked about producers. I want to talk about promoting club promotion. You're here in Ibiza. You've got a Croatia festival. You are touring the world with your brand now, or 2 brands now. So I want to chat about those, I suppose.
Okay. We've been working hard to develop our events business and strategy over the past few years, 5 years arguably, but certainly escalated over the past couple of years, and more so in the last probably 12 months or so. The rise of Glitterbox has been pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
And now we have Defected as a touring brand with residencies in Ibiza, the Defected Croatia festival, which will now be in its 4th year. We're doing our first London festival. We have residencies in Australia, America, Dubai, festivals throughout Europe, and 20 years of Defected has led to that point. Glitterbox has gone from 180 people in Boom on the opening party, that majority were probably free, to 6,500 people in the closing party at High. Glitterbox now also is residencies in Ibiza, in London, in Dubai, Australia, America.
Those parties sell out in minutes as well.
Part of the Defected Croatia festival, it's part of our London festival. And I would say that the 2 brands are certainly on par in terms of the amount of international coverage that they have. In some areas, Glitterbox is stronger than Defected, and the Glitterbox brand is a pretty phenomenal one. We've also actually got Classic Music Company events now as well, so we're hoping in a similar way that we developed Glitterbox, where Classic has come off the back of being labelled for 25 years and having the heritage with Derek Carter and Luke Solomon, and the association with Honey Dijon and the other artists that have released on the roster. We're hoping that the Classic brand also starts to increase, so we're doing more and more events for Classic, and as a result we're going to probably do over 200 events this year.
Whoa.
And we have a solid strategy for our events business, the touring schedule, the festivals, and also for the events business it extends beyond just the parties. We have the agency, which we have a number of artists on: Ferric Dawn, Dario Datis, Jess Bays, Shapeshifters, Melvo Baptiste, Simon Dunmore, Melon Bomb, Get Down Edits, Tenny Tinks, and if I've forgotten anybody I apologise, because I'm reeling those off very quickly, and that's looking to expand, and we are looking at other ways to continue to push on the events business. We're not doing these events for volume. We're doing these events because we've worked ourselves to a position where we are promoting ourselves internationally, and that there has become an interest in those. Some of the parties will be like 150 rooms in US, and others will be 10,000 capacity festivals in the UK. So it's not all about the big number. And going back to what we were saying about the community, even to this day, we're still focusing on developing our community. So if that's 100 people in a club in America, then that's a start. Excited. We're at Eden on Friday nights. We do Mambo pre-party and Eden. You can get advance tickets for €20 right the way through the entire season.
Amazing.
20 years of Defected, 20 years, 20 parties, €20. And the prices go up on the week of the party, but we've got a lot of online sales now. Glitterbox is at pre-party at Mambo on a Sunday, and then at High. And again, similarly, there will be 20 parties parties there, and we're probably going to do another 4 to 6 parties for Classic and other on the island. So this year we're going to probably do 86 parties, 84 to 86 parties in Ibiza. I mean, this week alone, Friday, I flew in Friday for the opening party, flew out Saturday, flew back on Tuesday, I'm going home tomorrow, which is Thursday, and then I'm back on Sunday and Monday. My summer's not going to be like that, but you know, we have a big team of people that will be representing at every event. Some weekends we have like multiple events. This weekend we've got We Are Festival on Saturday and Sunday, and we've got the 4 parties in Ibiza on Friday and Sunday. So it's going to be a busy summer, and we hope that we're putting on a show that people enjoy. You know, it's always been about the community and the parties for us. We just want people to come and have a great time.